Let me share with you a weird little behind the scenes thing this week. I get sometimes comments or people who will say something that the videos that I make are too long. Well, I'm sorry. Sometimes it takes 8 or 9 minutes to explain something in detail, and I am not going to dumb it down, give you partial information, something that's going to get you jammed up just for the sake of making a video more like a bumper sticker. This week is certainly an example of that as I answer a viewer email. The question I got was, just how much latitude does a private investigator have in digital surveillance on someone who's not on their own property? For example, they're at a hotel, motel, something like that. I emailed back and forth a little bit with this person. We talked about this issue and specifically kind of narrowed it down to the common areas of, say, a hotel, for example. And the idea is it okay to place a camera in, say, a plant in the hotel or in a cup that you accidentally leave on a desk or a counter and come back later and fetch the video from? So in other words, you're not there, but you're recording a common area where people probably don't necessarily think they're being recorded, but where they might think that they have an expectation of some privacy because there's nobody around. Look, the first thing that I think you need to ask yourself in any situation where you're doing surveillance is this reasonable? Now, we all know if we're sitting in a surveillance vehicle out at the curb, we're watching a house, that type of thing, for who comes or goes. Maybe you're watching a workers' compensation case and you're watching for this person to come outside and shovel the snow or cut the grass or whatever it might be. I think we all know zooming in on a window and filming what's going on inside a room in that house is completely unreasonable, unethical. Your client's not going to want that. You don't even mess with that. We kind of understand that at a gut level, right? So now talking about, say, a common area in a hotel, I think when you're there yourself, maybe you're wearing some kind of body camera, and if you're sitting in the lobby posing as if you're reading a newspaper or a magazine or enjoying a cup of coffee and you're filming what's going on, that strikes me as much more reasonable. They're in a lobby. They have no real, it's kind of in public, right? They have no real reasonable expectation of privacy, certainly not when they see you sitting there. However, if you take yourself out of the situation and just leave the camera behind, then yeah, they're still in public, but they know, look, there's nobody around. If they kind of adjust themselves or a piece of clothing or scratch an indiscreet itch, they expect to have some privacy there, and I think that's reasonable. So let's boil that down. Just because it's a common area does not make it reasonable to do covert surveillance there. Likewise, just because you've got the property owner's permission to do surveillance there, that may not be enough either. Again, it has to come back to the person's reasonable expectations of privacy, the visitor's expectation of privacy. So even if the motel or hotel owner, him or herself, gives you permission to put a camera there for a case you're working, that may not be enough. Now, if they are your client and they've asked you to install cameras, that's a whole different thing. You really, again, evaluate what's reasonable. But just because you've got permission is not necessarily enough. Also be aware, most of the time the person you talk to, and I have never made this request to somebody, but think about it. If you were at a hotel and you did ask permission for this, the desk clerk or somebody, they're probably not authorized to tell you, yeah, that's okay. So think about that. You might not even be getting permission from the right person on those rare occasions you would even seek permission for something like that. Also, and this is not a small thing, your client may have restrictions on the amount of covert video or any kind of covert activity that you use to collect information. It's very common that an attorney might not want you to covertly record a conversation. This is just one of those things that you have to ask the attorneys, find out where their boundaries are, even when it's perfectly legal to covertly record a conversation. And I think if you've watched me for any length of time, you know I'm not talking about phone calls, bugging a phone, that type of thing. There are certain restrictions. Always follow the law. But just interviewing somebody and covertly recording it, even just for your own notes, or so you can go back later and have the details right, there are some attorneys that won't want that. Likewise, with covert video recording, there are going to be some attorneys and some clients who totally rule that out, even when it's perfectly legal, even when you have permission and those types of things. So don't miss that. I do have a video about placing hidden cameras. I'll put a link in the description below. This is good stuff to know. You could jam yourself up pretty badly, both legally, but even in the public eye. Imagine if you were filming something and it became public. And think, you may want to think about that for all the things you do as a private investigator, as a process server. What if someone found out? What if this was on the 11 o'clock news? Is that something you would be comfortable with? And if the answer is, oh, I wouldn't want people to know that, or it seems seedy, it seems kind of sleazy, then man, you should really be looking at not doing that thing. It kind of comes down to what I share with you at the end of videos, my videos every week. And that is, I close by saying, this is Larry Kaye with ShadowAnyone.com. Remember, do the right thing, even if it's the hard thing.